from Catholic Relief Services. And this is Nafi Alomi, who's from Afghanistan. Has been working with CRS for 7 years?
3 years for
2 years.
And 4 years with MSF.
Oh, with Médecins Sans Frontières. So some of you that are interested in that group can talk. And this is Shannon Howard, who is currently, these two are currently in Pakistan because of the emergency there. So this is a good opportunity for all of us to find out about whether or not we've been able to make the transition from relief to rebuilding in Afghanistan, as your poster says, and then the dire straits that are going on in Pakistan. So could we give a Hoya welcome to our...
Thanks, guys, for coming to hear a little bit about Afghanistan. I work in our headquarters, CRS headquarters in Baltimore, and I cover South Asia. And Afghanistan is a priority country for South Asia because CRS Afghanistan has recognized the need to engage more with the U.S. public, to raise awareness about Afghanistan beyond what you hear in the media. And we've really had a wonderful experience working in the country with the Afghan people, helping to rebuild towards development. So Nafi and Shannon are both here to tell that story. So your questions will be welcome at the end. Thanks.
I'm going to just support Nafi and Ian on the Q&A. If you want my perspective on what it's like to imagine there. So Nafi, go for it, man.
Okay.
Everybody can see.
Thank you everybody for coming and showing interest to know about my country. So this is very good. Thank you. I start my presentation with a picture from Afghanistan just to show you how the country looks like, the terrain and the country. It's a very mountainous country with a lot of mountains, and hills and rivers, and not very green. So far it's not dry because in the past it was green, but now after the 6 years of drought that hit that area, the country looks very dry now, and only areas around the river, that there's some water in those areas. It's green, you see, just around the river it's green, and behind that is just all dry. Mountains are bare mountains. We have some forests in the east part of the country, where in the mountains, which are full of trees, but not. The majority of the country is just dry. Just to give you a little bit, where Afghanistan stands at the moment. As you might know, Afghanistan is the world's 6th poorest country and in need of long-term, generous support from individuals, governments, and NGOs, UN, and everybody. And, at the moment, after the 30 years of war in the country, we just started to rebuild the country. We are starting to build everything from scratch. We lost almost everything in that area. So, everything depends at the moment on foreign aid and the presence of the international community in that area and the support from them. Because if that is not there, I don't think we can be sure of that things will become better there, because we need it there at this particular time. Yeah.
Was it really poor before the 30 years war?
Before, like 30 years ago, we always talk about this with which I always like to talk, because, I hear these stories from my family, my mother and my father. 30 years ago, the country was not like what it is now. We had, it was more liberal, more, beautiful, no destruction, a lot of good schools, a lot of good universities, people were happy, they were, a lot of entertainment in the country. We had a lot of educated people there. But unfortunately, after the Russian invasion, all those good people, all those educated people fled the country. And you imagine, 5 million people left the country, and they just all migrated to Europe, United States, and mostly to Pakistan and Iran, which are the bordering countries. So yeah, but before 30 years ago, 30 years ago, the country was much better, much better. A lot of good things. I don't remember them, but my father and mother tell me all these good stories. Again, here is the map of the country, which I just want to show you, so that you have an idea where the country is located and which countries are bordering us. On the north of the country, we are bordered with Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, and Tajikistan. And on the south, we have a very long running border from here to here with Pakistan. And here on the west, we are bordered with Iran. And here on this part, which is, northeast somehow, very small border with China. And that border with China is all full of mountains. It's very difficult here. All northern Afghanistan is this area full of mountains here. And again, Afghanistan has got 31 provinces, and you see all of them here, like how big they are. And so we have the central part, and the western and eastern part, northeastern, and that's where CRS is working. You see the CRS logos here. In the west we are in Kabul, which is the capital city, which is located on this part of the country. And we are also somehow in central Afghanistan, Ghor province, which you just saw the picture in the beginning. The picture you just saw was from very central part of the country, which is a province called Ghor. And we were also working in Kandahar, which is this part of the country, south border with Pakistan. We had an office here for 2 years, but we just recently closed it because things are getting bad in that area, some security problems, and so in certain activities, CR decided to pull out from that area. So we're no longer here, but I will tell you what we did just because this is a very interesting part of the country. Southern, very conservative, but at the same time, very much open to international community and liking people to come to their area, but it's now things are bad because there's a lot of politics and other things involved. So, Afghanistan at a glance, just to, make Afghanistan holds an historical position on a crossroad, meaning, like during the ancient spice road, was because a lot of people, because of the strategic location of Afghanistan, a lot of people were interested in that country, trying to invade the country, and of course, battlefield between Britain and Russia in the 18th and 19th centuries, long time fighting, those two superpowers, and also the Cold War, Russians at that time, the invasion. So these three things really changed Afghanistan. Really, and it is all because of our location. I think that's. And the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan at the moment is a very representative democracy. The first, official presidential and parliamentary elections held in October 2004 and October 2005. This was the first, presidential election in the country that anyone remembers. First one in the history. And it was very interesting to see that after, a long time, Taliban presence and those very extremist groups in the country, a lot of other people, conservative, and all these kind of things. It was very interesting to see that after just, as soon as they left, that the people were so happy to go and vote and wanted to go and work for democracy. Wanted to go and just like the turnover that we saw, the people that they came out to the street was just like unbelievable. I couldn't, before the election day, I was in Afghanistan, and the next day was election, and just the day before that I was thinking, I was a little bit concerned, and I thought, oh, nobody will come because there are security problems and there's that and that. But believe me, on the next day, I couldn't believe my eyes. Everything was, streets were full of people, both female and male. Everybody wanted to come out and just be part of this process and just go and vote, and they like it so much. And everybody I talked to, they were so happy, and they couldn't believe it. It was something new for them to do, which was very amazing. And the same thing with the parliamentary elections, the same thing happened. Afghanistan is a country with a lot of ethnic groups, a lot of tribes, and but all of them, with this parliamentary election, everybody had a representative candidate, and during the election, we have now in the parliament representatives from all tribes and all ethnic groups. They are well represented, and female and male both are in the parliament. We have something like 60 to 70, I think, somewhere, female parliament members, 65 parliament female members. And actually, the head of the parliament, his assistant is a female. So in Afghanistan, a country like Afghanistan, so it's good. Things are changing, there is a gender balance now, and that's why we currently have the current political stability in the country. Because all the ethnic groups are well represented, and female and male are there, no gender issues. And that's why internally now we are fine. Internally we have the political stability, but of course the external political things still affect us, which is why we have so many security problems in the country. The current government is trying, struggling hard to get its control over the rural areas, remote areas of the country, which is very difficult. Again, I say there are not so many roads, there's no communication. They started it now. Communication is good. We have mobile phones for the first time in the country, so a lot of mobile phones everywhere. But but in general, accessing remote areas is problematic for both government and the ordinary people, population. So, but government is trying to get there, get their people there and get to control the area. And so it's extending beyond Kabul, the capital city. Again, some pictures from Afghanistan where we have an office also. You see, that's where we have an office. CRS is located here. Our field office. It's again very central part of Afghanistan's border province, which I showed you on the map in the central. We do a lot of good projects here. Paul is here. He might know a lot more than me about Iraq because I've not been here so long. I work in a different part of the country. I'm in the capital. But I know that we have a lot of cash for work, which are the labor projects, like community infrastructure, improving community infrastructure, and at the same time injecting cash to the community, paying the community to improve their own infrastructure, and then also get the money. So we make sure that the money stays in the community, and also the infrastructure is for the community. And that's, life here is very difficult. A lot of poor people live in this part of the country, very marginalized, very cut off from the rest of the country, As you see, the terrain looks very mountainous and makes access very difficult. Roads are not in very good condition, foot tracks. People use donkeys and horses for transportation from one place to the other place. Living conditions are very harsh in this area, especially in winter, because it's a high altitude area and it snows a lot, and it's very difficult for people to live there. But, I've been there once, and it took me from CRS office to walk and go behind this mountain that you see here. It took me 7 hours of walking to just go there and find a small community and just a small village there. So and I went there, just a small water spring that they could get their water from, with a small farm in there. So very difficult part of the country. But CRS is having a lot of good programs there, which I can't explain all of them because, and you can always go back to these books and they will tell you what we really do. But we do have a lot of very good programs in that area to support those poor people. Again, some more information about Afghanistan. 27 million from estimates in 2003. That's the whole population in the country. Not very big, but still we have a very big country. The population is not that big. Ethnic groups, as I talked before, that we have a lot of ethnic groups in the country, a lot of different ethnicities. The main one, the majority are Pashtun, Tajik, Uzbek, and Hazara. These are the four main dominant. And amongst these four, Pashtun is the most dominant. Maybe I'm a bit biased because I'm a Pashtun myself. So this is, like the main tribe. But then also Tajik and Uzbek and Hazaras are playing a very important role at the moment in the politics of the country. The president, Ahmed Karzai, is a Pashtun, his assistant is a Tajik, and his other assistant is Hazara, and his military advisor is an Uzbek. So you see, there is a good combination. He's got people from all the tribes. And he's trying to keep that balance, which is very good. And as I said before, that's why we have the current political stability. Literacy, which is a very important thing for all the communities, for all countries, and for all, You see that's quite low in my country, 43.2% for male and 14.1% for female. And that's quite very low, and that's only in the all the educated people are only in those urban areas, not in the rural areas, in the countrysides or away from that, But in those educated people are only in urban areas. You can't find just like if you go to a village in central Afghanistan, you might just find in the whole village, you might just find one person who can read and write, not more than that. Chronic malnutrition, which is a big problem in the country, 50%, and that's mainly due to shortage of food, and at the same time, lack of hygiene practices, awareness of hygiene practices. People don't really understand the importance of the basic hygiene practices, which is a very important thing. So that's why it's there. And access to safe drinking water is only 23% all over the country. Not very big, not very high, Again, this is because there's not so many safe drinking water resources in the country. The government is weak to do that and needs a lot of work on that. And plus, people, we could improve their water in rural areas. They could, like, for example, having a spring. They have a spring. They could, if they, seal it and make it, like somehow good, they could at least have some safe drinking water. But again, as I said, lack of knowledge of what is a safe drinking water makes the problem even bigger. So it's a bit problematic. And what is good with CRS programs that I remember is that in all our programs, we incorporate and we integrate this hygiene promotion program into it, so that whenever we go anywhere, we talk to community. We try to talk to both the female and male, telling them, trying to raise their awareness on hygiene issues, and that's good. So that's somehow, and CRS has been doing some drinking water projects in my area where I was based in Kandahar. We had installed more than 300 to 400 hand pumps, bore well, completely filled up and fine, so that people could use it for drinking water. At the same time, we train people how to, on hygiene practices too. And so here is Kandahar. Now we're going to talk more specifically about Kandahar. That's because I'm coming from there and I did all the programs, the CRS programs there. So Kandahar was an important focus for CRS for several reasons. One of them being, armed conflicts in that area, because we had so many armed conflicts in that part of the country, making that part of the country very vulnerable to a lot of problems, caused so many problems. Extreme marginalization of women in that area, because that Kandahar in the south is a very conservative place, and women were extremely marginalized. And power dynamics, this warlords, we have so many warlords in that part of the country, and drug lords also, that really control all the economy in that place. Every business is belonging to them. So all these poor people really have no access to any sort of business or anything like that. But they can do, but just very small little things. So there's not a freedom of everybody can go and do things. These warlords influence everything. So these are basically, for these three reasons, three main reasons. Of course, there were so many other reasons also, that CRS decided to come to Kandahar and try to help that community to get a better life. The greatest threats facing the people of Afghanistan are those brought by, severe absolute poverty, the threat from hunger, deadly winters, unemployment, illiteracy, preventable diseases, and others, and a short unfulfilled life. This is, when we talk about absolute poverty, as I say, you see that, you saw the picture from that central part of the country, we have so many areas like that. Very remote, cut off, very difficult to get in there. So once, its situation is like that, then you can imagine how people can do something like business or anything. So you can think of that area being very poor. So when they are poor, of course, then they are poverty and threat from hunger again. As I said, people are very poor. They need some support on that part. Deadly winters, as I said before, Kandahar, Afghanistan, very high altitude, so mountains, and snow, a lot of snow and rain and very cold weather conditions. And people are very, vulnerable to that because they don't have any heating facilities. No wood or nothing, no fuel, no gas. So people are very vulnerable. And preventable diseases, illnesses, are those, people in my country die from diseases that can easily be prevented, very easily prevented. Like diarrhea and malaria, or some other. I'm not a medical person, but I know that there are a lot of diseases that could easily be prevented, but people die from it because there are not so many medical facilities, and they can't access medical facilities in urban areas because they are so far and there's no transportation, roads are in bad condition. And in their own areas, there are no clinic, nothing, no, not even a nurse in there, so that they could go and refer to. So that's why people just die from that, which is very, disappointing. These are some pictures just to show you how a winter looks like. You see, this is again a picture from the central part of the country with mountains full of snow, very cold area. Actually, this is a couple, is in a graveyard who just lost a child in those cold weather, and this is a graveyard, and they just buried him here. So, that's how life is in the gardens. And again, here, as I said, talked about basic medical facilities. You see here just a nurse sitting, maybe a doctor, maybe the nurse, I don't know. You just see a few boxes of medicine here, and that's it for the whole community there. They don't have a pharmacy or anything like that they could go and get all those varieties of medicine. So that's just it. And again, a mother with her child, which is maybe malnourished child, maybe due to poverty, and you can see the pain in her face. And Kandahar programs where I was working, just to give you a bit details on what I did in Kandahar, was livelihood inputs through voucher system. This was like we would go into a community and talk to community about their needs, and then we would just find their skilled labor if they had any. And then some people do carpentry work there, some do mechanics, some are mechanics, some are tailors, some are farmers, so they had some basic skills. And CRS wanted to go there and through voucher system try to enhance their skills by providing them tools on their skills, applicable to their skills. Like for carpenters, we bought them carpentry material so they could just develop their business a bit. And the same for mechanics, farmers, and everything. And then we had the cash for work component of this program, which was focusing on, as I said before, these were labor projects, like labor. We were hiring labor from the community and paying them so that the money stayed in the community, and at the same time they were doing, like cleaning canals, repairing roads, making culverts. And if you hear a picture, all these people are employed from the community trying to clean a very long canal, 16-kilometer canal, I remember this. And which was stuck for a long time, blocked, no water in that. Now people are working, cleaning that. And when that was cleaned, this canal could take water from a nearby river, taking it into their village so they could do some agriculture. And at the same time, they kept the money that they spent on that. And that was creating a sense of ownership also in that area, so that they did it themselves and that they would keep it like this in the future. Vocational training for women, as I talked before, we had classes in this area. We were hiring, we hired a female teacher, tailoring teacher, that she would go and train them. Female in a classroom, like a 20 or 30 or 40 in one classroom, training them on how to do tailoring, and then we would buy them also. We bought them tailoring machines and some clothes and prints and some other materials so they could make some clothes and then take it into market and sell it. This was good for their income generation and at the same time for their social life, like getting them involved in the social activities, getting them out of their homes, going out to the market, negotiating price, taking something, making something and going. But this was at the same time a good entertainment for them also, plus, a chance for them to go out and enjoy themselves and be part of the society. And all these programs were basically, targeting returnees, those after when the Russians invaded Afghanistan, 5 million people left the country. All went abroad, to US, Europe, and mostly, as I said, Pakistan and Iran. So when this new government came in and the Taliban were ousted and they left the country and this new government came in, a lot of refugees started to come back from Iran and Pakistan because they had, they wanted to come back, and it was so far we have 2.5 million people returned from those areas. So, and mostly coming back to these rural areas, and when they would come back, they would not have the facilities to start a new life and do a business or something like that. So we were going and targeting those refugee returnees so that they could start a new life and a new business so that they could be encouraged to stay and not go back. And at the same time, we were focusing on other vulnerable population also, individuals and households. Operating in Kandahar, of course, in my part of this country where I work, there were so many problems, security problems, concerns. Made direct implementation, meaning like we couldn't go directly do work in the community because of security concerns. As me being like an international staff couldn't travel to go there, and me also like local staff working for an international organization would be somehow difficult, during some heightened security situations wouldn't be possible to go. So that was why direct implementation was almost very difficult. Programs close to Kandahar, it was okay because we tried to have, we had also programs close to Kandahar town, Kandahar city, because security around town and cities were okay somehow. And restrictions on women staff movement and working with women was another very difficult part of our job because as CRS we had difficulty, going to making sure that the communities are convinced to let their women go out and sit in classrooms like this and learn, and do some business. So it was difficult to get them, but we did it. And also at the same time we had to do this through our female staff because we couldn't go and talk to women. So female staff movement to those areas was always problematic in trying to convince the community that female staff from CRS will come and talk to a female. So yeah, it was CRS programs focused. Once we had all these problems, then we thought, okay, if we can't go there and we can just make sure things are happening there, then it doesn't mean that we should just leave those people there helpless, and nobody is there to help them. So it doesn't mean just go. So we came up with this idea of working with local community councils, which we call them Shura. Those local community councils exist in almost, this is a traditional thing in Afghanistan, that in each village, in each district that you go, each community you go, we have these little community councils that they work together and they are there and they normally are the elders of the community. So we thought, let's go and talk to them and maybe work through them. They do the job that we want to do, so ask them to do it. It's their work. Get them to it, and it will be like it will create a sense of ownership as well. So, and again, some pictures of how we did these canals, like cleaning canals and making again cash for work, labor working on that. And so working through community shuras, we call them shura, these community elders or community council, whatever you call them. We wanted to work with them in an organized way so that we make sure that our resources are not misused or we are meeting our target and that the things get to the targeted beneficiaries. And that we made sure like we signed an MOU with the committee. We asked them to come and talk to them and we told them introduce CRS, our work and what we wanted to do in their area, and then they signed and we had that on black and white. Pre-project training for the community council members, we asked them to come back, sit down with us. We told them the whole purpose of the program, why is that, who are we targeting and what is the idea behind it, and how will it work and how you should do it, and all those kind of things. So we trained them on that, and we had, of course as an organization we have forms to you, specific forms and things like that, like beneficiary registration and things like that. And those were all in English, but at that time, training them, we translated those into their local language so they could understand it. Not so many people could read and write, but at least, one or two could do that. So, and we hired them also. We just paid them an incentive, not salary, because salary would mean like they are paid to do this job or something, but we wanted them to have the pride of saying that they do the job for their community. But the incentive we just did give it to them as an encouragement for their job and an appreciation. Cash for work payments, when we would ask, like these sort of labor projects that I'm talking about, we would hire labor and the labor would work on canals and roads. And they, of course, with at times of payments, cash is very volatile, very sensitive issue. So CRF would go with them on that time. We would take an Shura member with us, a community council member with us, and us 3 or 4, and we would go and call all those people and give them the money and get them signed off, and that's it. So that we did together. Surveys and beneficial registrations, initially, primarily we did that together. Like we registered all the beneficiaries ourselves with them together so that they could understand how to do it. But later on, there were times that they were finding their own vulnerable people and reporting to us and making them register. And then we would go later if we would have to check to go see if they're doing it. Yeah, and monitoring during heightened security situations, like I said, before, when securities were very bad, no CRS staff could go to the field to see if they were doing the job, how was the progress, But, these guys came up with very good ways of reporting to us. They came up with the way of, like bringing photos of, because they couldn't write a report to us, and they would come up with photos of the work progress, like say, this is how deep we dig the canal, and this is how much rubble we put on the road, and this is how long we cleaned it, and it's good, those pictures were very nice, and we put them, we were using it as our reports. And they would come up also with videos, video of their work. Some people might just get this question of how can those people find a video camera. In Afghanistan, we have this trade between some traders in Afghanistan. They do this trade between Dubai and Afghanistan. We get all these second-hand stereos, video cameras, and all these sort of things. You just can't go in there in those markets and you can find it. So these are smart people. They just bring. So they found a video camera, and then they went there and filmed it. It was an old one, big one, with a big tape. So, but it was good. I liked the idea and their interest, in that, to show that they were transparent and that they wanted to work. Yeah. Can we go to the other? Yeah. As I said before, 3 Shura members, like 3 of these community members, we paid them a small incentive for their work, because they were doing a lot of work, physical work. They were coming and reporting to us. And we paid them for transportation also, because they were coming up and down between the community and my office. And CRS community development, like for the community development, we did one other thing also, that some technical issues they would raise for our projects. Our engineers would go there, went there, train them how to do it, like not really very train them on how engineering is, because they wouldn't know, like some very basic things I'm talking here about. That we would go and help them with some basic, technical issues. And also the other thing we did with these communities, which was very important, and that really changed the community so well, it has brought a very big change to the community. We asked these community councils to come to Kandahar city and go and attend coordination meetings together with us, like coordination meetings with other NGOs that were working in the area, non-government organizations, UN agencies, to come and attend and say what they were doing, and we were just like, they should talk about it. And they did that, and the guys really got so well familiar with the whole system, so they kept going even if we were not there. They were going to other NGOs, asking UN, other government agency, and asking them, inviting them to come and work in their community. And that community, believe me, now is the toughest community in the whole area. They have their roads paved now. Their main road from Kandahar city to their town is paved, and they have electricity. They are getting electricity soon, I'm sure next week or sometime. I'm still in contact with those guys. They have mobile phones, antennas putting up in that area, and they are getting tap water in their town. So it's really good. Those guys are really, we build on their capacity, and we made, we tried to make them understand that it's not only us to come and work for you. We made sure that they understand how important their role is in rebuilding their communities, and that in development it's not only about big buildings and roads and things like that. It's just about behavior change and you trying to struggle to get things done for you, because we will not be there always. It's you that you will be there forever, so you have to work for your community. And they did it so well, and I'm so proud of that sort of project that CRS implemented in that area, because it changed the whole area. And other thing, like this community council was part of our strategic planning meetings in Afghanistan. Like if we told them, like, okay, fine, you don't read and write, but you can have ideas, you can talk to us. We brought them into our meetings. Like when we were discussing the future program for Afghanistan in our strategic planning programs meetings, they came and they brought in some great ideas, and we were so transparent with them. They were transparent with us, and that created a very good, and very, it made our relationship so strong, and it was we started to trust each other so well, and the relationship became very respectful. So, and one last thing I would say on that one, then because they knew we were a Catholic organization and we were an American organization, they knew that, absolutely, no doubt in that. And when Pope John Paul II died, they sent us a condolence letter from Kandahar. Can you believe that? Like 34 people signed it and stamped it, sent it to us and saying, we want to share the grief with you. And they came to me and they said, we know that CRS is a Catholic organization, and we know that you are a Muslim and you're not a Catholic, but we want you to take this letter to the headquarters. And I said, I promise I will get this letter. So I feel very proud that when I come and talk to everybody here, that I'm bringing their message to me. So the letter is down there, but their message comes here. So it's good. That shows, because we were transparent, we were working with each other, we created this respect amongst us. So we feel that there is that tolerance, religious tolerance. The things that you hear in the news, in the media, all these kind of things, I say, yeah, these things happen in my country. Don't say it doesn't happen. But it's not the people, it's just a specific group of people, individuals who try to do these kind of things for their own, political interests or other business interests. They have their own agendas, and they try to make things harsh in that area. Of course, we have these neighboring countries who had their interests in Afghanistan for a long, long time in the war in Afghanistan. They made a lot of money with it. They always were involved in that. And now they don't want to see their hands cut off to see the international community presence in my country. So they're jealous of the whole thing. And they don't want that in that area, because a weak Afghanistan is a good money for them. And it's a good business for them. Everything we use in my country, from paper to a cup of water or bottle of water or clothes or anything, it comes from Pakistan and Iran. So it's a good business for them. And I'm not political here, but I just want to make sure that people understand that we are tired of fighting anymore. We don't want no more fighting. Just finished. 30 or 40 years of fighting in that country, people are fed up. They don't want it. And now it's other people that cause it in my country. And again, we say, this is, our message, working in solidarity alongside the people of Afghanistan. We see how much more similar we are than we are different. Once you go and you work with them, you get them to know you and you know them, and you respect each other, I think all this religious things and things, they go aside. Those stay like very personal things there. But respect is respect. It's human. And we don't see any problem with that in my country. We were so, CRS is very well treated where I worked. Was very well respected and very well known in the community. And we are, as we say, not so many differences. That we are one human family in that. It's just like you go there. It's just those misunderstandings that cause so many other problems. And if once you are there and you understand, the culture, the differences that are there, you get to know them. Why are the differences are there? What are the reasons there, and what are they meaning? Because sometimes we have very wrong interpretation of those differences, and very wrong perception of those differences. Maybe those differences are not the way we look at it, and maybe they are less different than we think. So I think, there are so many good opportunities now in Afghanistan for the international community to stay with us and continue working with us. We are ready to work with them and get things done and for a better life in a safe Afghanistan, which will mean a safe thing for the whole world. So we are ready. Yeah, that's it. Any questions?
One question I have, which is a pressing issue today, of course, is the separation between the religion and state that Western liberal democracies have experienced for a long time. Europe is very secular. In the United States, we have rich plurality of religions. But in Afghanistan, in light of what just came up with the apostasy and someone who was a former Afghani who for a number of years was in Europe, converted to Christianity, and then came back and was obviously you understand the situation, being condemned to death and the international outcry. How are they able to, how is Afghanistan, outside of Kabul, able to balance the Muslim tradition with the Western liberal constitutional separation understanding?
I tell you, like in Afghanistan, as I say, 30 years of war made a big difference in that country. A lot of illiterate people. And this will take time to get people to understand the whole issue. Like the whole international community. What is going on outside Afghanistan? Those people don't know what is going on here. They don't know that schools like this exist here, They are just like they think all over the world is the same like Afghanistan. So I think before we get into those kind of things, it's us to work on our people to know these things. And once they get to know these things, I think it will be much more easier for the government of Afghanistan to make sure that they fit in the international community. And this will take time. And I think, this is not an easy job to do. It will take generations, But my government is struggling hard to work on it. Try to make people aware of the life outside Afghanistan. And again, still, I see a lot of good things because when I go to my communities, I sometimes think it should have been worse because of all those problems we had, but it's not. As I say, things like this, getting a letter from that conservative community, telling you, like very religiously strict area, send you a letter and say that we want to share the grief with you on the day of the Holy Book. So it's good. It means they are willing, if there is information, if you get them understand, and if you work with them, there is respect, there is tolerance. And I don't see any problem with that. And there are so many, CRS working my personal experience, I work with CRS. And I come here with Catholic Relief Services, I come here to the United States, I'm going back to Afghanistan. My family is living in Kandahar, which is again very conservative part of the country. And believe me, I don't feel anything. I feel safe. I don't have any problem. People know, all the people in Kandahar know that I'm in the United States now, and that I work for a Catholic organization. So if I had any problem, I would say, okay, I'm not going back, or I might have not done this here. Talking to press here, I go and talk. They, putting that on, and this will go back. But I understand. I believe my people won't mind these kind of things. They are open to these kind of things, in spite of having all those harsh times. They are open to this. But it's as I say, it's other external factors trying to cause problems inside. And the more my country gets powerful, the more it gets its structure, organized, the more these things will, these external factors stop. Once that stops, I'm going to tell you, you will love the
In a country like Afghanistan, how does an organization like yours make the judgment call when it comes to questions of how you divide your money up in your budget between, short-term, immediate triage, efforts to feed people in a country where malnutrition hovers around 50% and a lot of people live on less than $1 a day? You could tie all of your money up into that sort of effort, but you guys seem like you're involved in a lot of long-term development of developing human capital and infrastructure development. Who makes those decisions, and if you can comment, what is the split in your budget between short-term versus long-term activity?
I think now we had this successful parliamentary election, and now we have a parliament in place. And the government of Afghanistan, I'm sure now, I hear talks in the news that they are talking now the budget will here you get the budget approved through the Congress. And I think it's going to be the case in Afghanistan also. And this, I heard that the parliament will be sitting together and they have a commission in the parliament that they will be focusing on these things, like trying to prioritize issues in Afghanistan in terms of budgeting, So that is happening in Afghanistan. Of course now, since in the past 2 years or 4 years that this new government have come, there are some problems, there were some problems, but things are improving, such as, budgeting, things like that.
But who writes your checks for the CRS?
I'll address that. I'm Paul. I'm the head of program for CRS Afghanistan. You're exactly right. I mean, you could find reasons to spend all of your money on emergency relief rather than kind of longer-term development. We've tried to be creative in the way we approach it. The cash for work projects are these kind of big civil infrastructure projects, and we pay people a daily rate to work on the projects. So the wage that they're receiving gives them kind of immediate relief, and obviously cash is kind of the best thing you can give to people because they know what best to do with the cash. But through that, we're also do our best to provide quality engineering. So when they're building the infrastructure, it's quality infrastructure. So you're kind of approaching it from two ways. The other thing is that you had the 2.5 decades of conflict, and then followed the kind of between 1998 and 2005, there was a severe drought. 5 of those 7 years were drought years. So the level of poverty and the difficulties that you were seeing at that that we were seeing in 2002, 2003, 2004 were extreme. In the last couple of years, things have improved. A lot of money has come into the country, both from development work, but also from poverty protection. And so there's a lot more money in the country, and the difficulties are not as acute as they were 2 to 3 years ago. So, which has provided the opportunities to be looking at longer-term development projects, like education, like the agricultural work that we started.
But CRS doesn't engage in any sort of like mass feeding projects or anything just for people, children who are malnourished. Or it's primarily like we will enable you, but you have to work first.
There are those projects in the country,
But not through CRS.
we are not doing that. It was not something that we could rule out, but we're not doing it now. World Food Program,
Right.
the UN World Food Program, does a lot of that.
You got the answer. I got your question wrong, so
no.
the answer is okay.
I was kind of curious as to what the current political system is doing to change like the war and the drug lord situation. You know how you said they have pretty much total economic control or control of the market. So I was curious as to if they're doing to change that.
You referring to the war?
The new democratically elected political officers.
Yeah, now, like the country is now getting, the good thing that I see there is that there are so many political parties now, starting to work in the country and shaping up, which is good, and they are working, and all of them are somehow, they have their own, they try to criticize on the government, and they, make things, so it's happening there, but, we have, as we say, the warlords and the drug lords, the drug dealers, we have them in the countries, they are there. The government is trying to struggle with them, but this is not, like these drug lords especially, they are so powerful, they have their links outside Afghanistan also, not only inside Afghanistan, they are outside, again, Pakistan, Iran, and they come up to Europe and all over the world, they have their links. So it's a very complicated job to do, but the current government is trying hard to get on that, and try to, eradicate all the poppy cultivation and farms in Afghanistan. At the moment, Afghanistan, as I say, is the 6th poorest country in the world. So those farmers who are growing this poppy is not willing to do this, but they have to do it because that's their only source of income. And but the government, CRS, and other NGOs, UN, are all trying to come up with alternative crops for them to grow, and instead of poppy cultivation. And once that cultivation is stopped, more alternatives created from people, I'm sure the warlords will disappear from that cultivation.
Sometimes when one reads the paper, it seems like the Taliban are trying to regroup and, re-penetrate the society. Is that just on the fringes? Is that likely?
One thing that we believe is that the Taliban will not come back. So yeah, we believe in that because we don't want it. There were so many problems with that. But yeah, you're right. We hear things like that in my country also, they are coming back, they're regrouping. But they are not that big power to cause anything big like coming back or taking province over a province or district of Afghanistan. The police and the army and the coalition forces are there. What they do nowadays is just hit and run, or just do suicide bombs. Suicide bombs, again, it's not the Taliban, I would say. It's more the Al-Qaeda thing to do. And Al-Qaeda, they have their network all over that region. And they bring in people. Currently, we have some increased number of, these suicide bombs, and all those investigations proved that they were all foreigners, and that they were from outside, coming from Pakistan mostly, to come and do suicide bomb attacks in Afghanistan and then go back. And they were all foreign nationalities.
For direct investment into the country, international corporations or just businesses in general, putting money there, was there during the Cold War when the Taliban took over, were there any international corporations that had offices or some sort of infrastructure within Afghanistan? And concerning today, is there an interest by any organizations to put long-term investment into specific areas for either labor or whatever it would be, natural resources?
In terms of the past, there were not so many corporations during the Taliban. We had no companies or big corporations working in Afghanistan. There were none. And during the Cold War, of course, there was none also, because there was a huge fighting going on in the country and nobody was interested to come. But as far as the current time is concerned, I tell you, there is huge opportunity for foreign investment in that country. Huge opportunity. And a lot of companies have, so far, we see some companies have moved in, and I hear that more are coming in. Like I tell you, the AWCC, the Afghan Wireless Communication Center, they are doing mobile phones all over the country. And that they are making huge money, and it's a huge business. And the same thing is with Vocational, which is another mobile company. They do a lot of work. We see a lot of construction companies coming in, like doing roads and buildings and bridges and other things. And a lot of private, small investments from like Afghans themselves who were abroad. They're coming back and trying to invest money in their own country. And we see, there's a huge opportunity, and I think the government of Afghanistan has set a very relaxed rules for people to come and invest in my country. So there's absolutely, a huge opportunity for people to come and do that, and they are doing it. And now we have them for the first time, and I think in the history of Afghanistan, having so many big corporations working in Afghanistan. And there's
a huge pipeline.
Yeah, that's a huge one.
And in politics of the region, there's a pipeline. There's natural gas coming from Afghanistan, looking for a port to get it to. One way of doing it is going across Iran out to Turkey, and the other would be going south through Afghanistan and out to Pakistan. And the U.S. would like to see it go south toward through Afghanistan. A huge project would have big implications in terms of infrastructure construction in the country, and then it would provide access to natural gas, which would have a lot of natural resource environmental benefits for the country, as it right now relies primarily on shrubs and a few trees that are left for winter heating. So that, as Nafi's pointing out, there's a lot of companies coming in, small companies, kind of opportunistic, seeing what's possible, a lot of kind of risky ventures going on. If they can make it work, then there's a lot of people who are willing to put a lot of money into this pipeline. So that'll be the interesting thing to see how long it will take for that to come around.
Yeah, I don't know too much about Afghanistan's history, but I've heard in the past that the Pashtun majority had sometimes repressed some of the minority groups. So I was wondering how the different ethnic groups are relating to each other now versus, say, in the past, under the Taliban and before that.
Yeah, like during the Taliban, this is very true that the Pashtun were the Taliban. Taliban were Pashtuns,
Right.
and they're somehow made problems with the other ethnic groups in there, especially the minor minorities. But I think now with the current government, we see again that it's a Pashtun leader trying to call an Hazara, for example, a minority group, to come and work with him, and trying to build on that. Still people will have that in mind. It will take time before people will stop. But currently, I tell you, as we see, there's no problem. They're happy to work together. We see them in the parliament, they're all together. I know this parliament is a very complex, like it's made of a lot of different people from different backgrounds, different ethnics, and like people in this parliament, there are people from former regimes, from the Russian government, like from the communist regimes. There are people from that regime in the parliament. There are some representatives from Taliban who were good Taliban in the past and caused no problem. They are in the parliament, we see Mujahideen, the warlords, they are in the parliament, and you see the technocrats, the current people, like from foreign countries, they are in there. And before this parliament was shaping up, we thought, oh, this is going to be a case with these guys out there coming from all different backgrounds, so how are they going to work together? But now we see it's interesting. We see, so far it's 3 months or 4 months since it's been put up, or longer, no problem. It's been okay, the people are happy to work with each other, they come up with good ideas, they come up with good decisions. So it means, people are, that they don't take that as a ethnic fighting against an ethnic. It was a group fighting against a group. Like even during the Taliban, when the Pashtuns were trying to cause problems to the Hazaras, even at that time we had normal Hazaras living in Kandahar, which nobody was bothering. So, but it was like the Hazaras had a group also fighting, and the Taliban were fighting against them. And of course, some civilians got hurt and killed, and from each side. But I think that's at the moment not a big deal in that country. It still gets somehow some parts of the country still some problem, but again, it's not so big, that I would say.
Since you've both been in Pakistan, and since the UN Undersecretary was saying that the winter was going to be worse than the earthquake and the tsunami, can you tell us?
It wasn't. We were blessed with good weather.
Blessed
There
with
was,
good weather.
it was, in the beginning there was a lot of rain, sleet. People probably did die of exposure and respiratory problems, but it wasn't nearly as bad as it could have been. So if you had shelter, you had one place to lay your head, you could survive the winter. It wasn't as bad as we thought, but people did die because of exposure to the cold conditions.
Is the winter over now?
Yeah, it's springtime.
Okay.
That's great. We're flying kites.
It's a beautiful part of the country, that part.
Yeah, it is gorgeous.